Walker, and I'm the Enterprise Coordinator, or one of the Enterprise Coordinators within Bridge GM, which is at Greater Manchester Combined Authority. I work specifically with schools and colleges in Stockport, and wherever your school or college is in GM, you too will have an Enterprise Coordinator supporting everything to do with careers and choices that you'll make about what you do after school or college. I'm joined today by Tom Kay, who is my colleague from Bridge GM. Tom is very kindly and competently ensuring that the technology works properly so that you can fully participate and enjoy the live session that we've got for you today. So thanks so much for joining us on day 3 of an exciting week of sessions and videos about working within the green industry or sector, which is very much a growth sector all over the country, but specifically so in the Northwest. The events that we bring to you this week are hopefully the chance for you to hear from people who work in sustainability in a wide range of sectors and why it's just so important that they are green and what the word green really means. So there's lots of different types of projects across Greater Manchester, and they're focusing on helping us to use clean energy and sustainable materials in the future. Our speakers this week will also explain what jobs are in demand, the career pathways that you might follow, and any top tips that you might need to know about entering this particular world of work. The Green Industry Skills Pet Fair is part of the wider Meet Your Future campaign, and this was launched by the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, back in April 2019. Meet Your Future offers experiences of the workplace and encounters with employers to young people across Greater Manchester, and that's in a variety of different business environments to help you young people learn about different roles and the sort of careers that are out there to give you the first-hand experience you need to know to work your way around all of it. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome and have Rachel Perry, who is a project manager on something particularly called HyNet, and she represents an organisation called Progressive Energy, and she's presenting with us today. So before I hand over to Rachel, once again, Rachel, thank you so much for being with us. This particular session, which you're about to participate with, is all about clean energy for future growth, and hopefully it'll provide an insight into the energy sector in general. Specifically, you'll hear about how it's changing and what that really means in terms of shaping and providing appropriate pathways and giving the skills to young people in GM, ensuring that you can work within and also able to contribute to a thriving local growth sector. Transforming and rethinking sustainable energy is a huge part of making sure that our futures are green, and going forward we will all start to recognise more and more jobs and opportunities that are popping up within the green sector. This will have an impact on the need for the workforce of the future to have specific skills and knowledge for jobs that at the moment we don't even know exist, but we're trying to predict them. People like myself and Rachel have an important role in getting this right, and part of what we're doing is planning directly now, working with industry representatives from a range of energy and green sectors and making sure they're properly connected to schools and colleges to make sure young people like yourselves in Greater Manchester are fully equipped for the jobs of the future that sit within the green sector. I'm going to hand you over in a second to Rachel. She's got some amazing slides and some really interesting themes that she's going to cover with you. And towards the end of the session, we're going to go open up a task. So I don't know whether you're aware you were going to be doing that today, but Rachel's put together a really interesting task for you to think about. And we'll maybe have some responses on that if people are happy to do that. And there'll also be an opportunity for some live questions and answers. So Tom, my technical assistant, will be having a look at the questions as they come in through the chat function. So if you're able to have a little look at that, we'll certainly be encouraging your communication between Rachel, myself and Tom in that way. So without further ado, Rachel, I'm going to hand over to you for your stunning presentation.
Thanks very much, Claire, and hello to everyone. I'm really pleased to be here today. It's really exciting to be able to talk to you all about the project I'm working with and a little bit about my career and the skills that I've been developing over the years, and get all of you enthusiastic about getting involved in the future. So first, a bit about me. My name is Rachel Perry. As Claire said, I work for a company called Progressive Energy, who have been around working on clean energy projects since about 1998. My background is as a chemical engineer. I actually studied at the University of Manchester, so I am a local, and I've been working predominantly in the oil and gas industry for the majority of my career up until 2018. In 2018, I had a good think about what it was I really wanted to do with my career and decided that the oil and gas wasn't really for me. I wanted to make a real difference to the planet that we live on, to climate change, and to put my career towards something a little more meaningful where I could see a real impact that I was making on people's day-to-day lives. So I joined Progressive Energy and I've become the project manager for this really exciting project called HyNet Northwest, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about today. So first things first, what is HyNet Northwest? So we are a groundbreaking decarbonisation project. We are focused on the northwest of England and North Wales, so encompassing Greater Manchester. And you guys will get to see the benefits of HyNet Northwest as they get built out over the coming decade. And our primary focus is on replacing fossil fuels and capturing and storing carbon dioxide. So there's lots of different elements to the project, and I'll talk you through those as we go through the slide pack. But fundamentally, what we're doing is addressing the climate emergency. We recognise that there's a problem and we need to do something about it right now. We can't wait for another 10 years, another 20 years, because the carbon is going into the atmosphere every day and we don't have the time to waste. What this will also do is put the Northwest and North Wales at the forefront of the UK's net zero journey. Some of you may have heard the Prime Minister, the government talking about net zero, and we actually have a binding legal target to get to net zero emissions by 2050. And what HyNet will do will allow this area to become a national and potentially even a world leader in the development of the technologies, the skills, the workforce and the infrastructure that allow us to reduce our carbon emissions. We plan to act quickly, so we're working really hard at the moment to get through some of the really detailed engineering and some of the commercial challenges associated with the project, and our plan is to come online in 2025. So as soon as in 4 years' time, we will be taking CO2 out of the atmosphere and making a material difference to climate change. What we also want to do is make sure that this area stays as a really attractive investment location, bringing jobs and skills into the area. So as you probably already know, the Northwest is a very successful industrial region, and lots of manufacturing, lots of oil and gas facilities, lots of things going on in this area. It's very busy and it's very good for the local economy. And the problem is, as the cost of carbon emissions rises, and that's going to make the Northwest look less and less attractive compared to other parts of the world where perhaps the carbon emissions aren't quite so expensive. And what this will allow us to do is let the industry in the area switch to become net zero and therefore attract people into the area. And this will create jobs and strengthen the economy for all of you guys living and working in the region. Another really exciting part of this project is starting off a hydrogen economy. So a lot of you might be aware that currently the energy industry, what we run our cars, our homes, and everything that we make is generally running off fossil fuels. And what we're hoping to do is to switch away from fossil fuels and move towards using hydrogen as a replacement. So hydrogen can be used for heating our homes. It can be used as a fuel in cars, in trains, in heavy goods vehicles, and we can use it in power plants to generate electricity as well. So what we want to do is be one of the first regions to really start transitioning this country to be using hydrogen as a base fuel rather than the fossil fuels that we use today. But before I go into any more detail, I wanted to go back a step. So what does net zero mean? I suspect some of you have already heard it, but just in case you're not aware of what's going on, net zero is the balance between the greenhouse gases that go into the atmosphere and the greenhouse gases that get removed from the atmosphere. I'm sure all of you know greenhouse gases are what causes climate change. So the temperature of the Earth is increasing year on year on year, and that's having a really detrimental impact on our day-to-day lives, and that will only continue to get worse as time progresses. We can't tackle climate change without net zero greenhouse gas emissions, so we need to make sure that we are not putting more into the atmosphere than we are taking out. There are ways to remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, so there are things called direct carbon capture, where you can literally directly absorb it from the air around us. Planting more trees, restoring grasslands and peatlands, all of that takes greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. But what we do on a huge scale at the moment, particularly in industry and manufacturing, is emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and we need to stop doing that. Net zero is not optional. We don't have a choice here. This isn't something that we can decide not to do. If we don't get to net zero, then climate change will only get worse. And that's been recognised. I think everyone today recognises that climate change is a real problem and that we need to do something about it. And our governments understand that as well. So I don't know if you're aware, but Greater Manchester Authority has committed to get to net zero as soon as 2038. And that's a really ambitious and really praiseworthy goal. Liverpool's close behind at 2040, Cheshire by 2045, and the UK as a whole wants to be net zero by 2050. That's really, really important because actually the Northwest region is one of the worst emitters in the country. That's a direct result of the fact that we are so successful in our industry and in our manufacturing, and there is so much going on. But unfortunately, that growth in manufacturing results directly in greenhouse gas emissions. And what we need to do is break that link and allow the region to continue to thrive whilst we stop putting CO2 into the atmosphere. And that's what HyNet allows us to do. So HyNet's fantastic because it offers lots and lots of options for industry, for individuals, for businesses to move away from fossil fuels and releasing CO2 emissions. And we're addressing this by doing several things. So first things first, we're building hydrogen production plants. So the first of these is going to be built at the Stanlow refinery in Cheshire that some of you may have heard of. And at that plant, we're going to produce hydrogen by taking natural gas and splitting that into pure hydrogen and into CO2. You might ask, how are we addressing the problem if we're just producing more CO2? But this is where the carbon capture comes in. So at that plant, we will directly capture that carbon dioxide as soon as it is produced and take that away so it doesn't get put into the atmosphere. This hydrogen can then be used for various things. So one of our big projects that's also going on in parallel is a study into industrial fuel switching. So this is taking existing industry that runs off natural gas primarily for things like heating, running boilers, generating electricity, and switching those directly to hydrogen. And we're doing a big project at the moment to prove that that is safe and effective and doesn't cost any more than using natural gas at the moment. Another opportunity that we have is hydrogen blending. So that's actually where we put hydrogen into the gas network that you have at the moment. So at your homes right now, you probably have a boiler which runs on gas that comes into your house. And what we're looking at doing is the opportunity of blending hydrogen into that and slowly replacing the natural gas with hydrogen. At this point, only up to 20%. We're starting small and we just want to check that it's all okay. But in the long term, there is a potential that we will actually replace all of the gas that's going into your homes with hydrogen. And what that means is that when you run your boilers, you won't be producing CO2 and emitting it from your homes. And actually, a lot of the CO2 that goes into the atmosphere at the moment is coming directly from people's houses. To support all of that, we will be building a big hydrogen network, which I'll show you a little map of on the next slide, and also some hydrogen storage caverns that allow us to keep hydrogen for when we have peaks in demand. So this is where hydrogen has a huge advantage over other energy sources such as renewable energy. So things like wind power and solar power, those are fantastic and they're a really good option for reducing our carbon emissions. But unfortunately, sometimes the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, and we still need to be able to generate energy during those times. And that's why we have hydrogen storage to allow us to keep it for when those renewable energies just can't provide us what we need. As I've already touched on, we'll be capturing the carbon from the hydrogen production plant, but also from lots of other industrial locations across the Northwest, which I'll show you on the next slide as well. And finally, we will run all of that carbon dioxide through a pipeline, and we'll be putting it under the seabed in existing gas fields in Liverpool Bay. So those gas fields have held natural gas and fossil fuels for millions of years. They're now coming to the end of their life. They're nearly empty. So instead, we're going to repurpose them to put CO2 back underground where it will stay for the rest of time. So here's a little map. Hopefully it's roughly familiar. You can see yourselves up there in the top right hand corner. So Manchester is very much part of the region in which we're hoping this project can support. As you can see, there's a big white circle right in the middle, which is the Stanlow refinery, which is near Chester. And that is where the hydrogen production plant is going to be built. Our current plans have 2 being built at Stanlow, but we intend to scale that up and eventually have 4 and perhaps even more into the future as the hydrogen economy starts to grow and there's more and more demand for the hydrogen that we're producing. Those white lines that you can see there, that's the hydrogen pipeline network. So that's going to be spreading out really broadly. We're heading all the way up north into Lancashire to several potential industrial hydrogen users up there. We're going out to the west to Liverpool and the east to you guys in Manchester, where there'll be opportunity for the blending into homes that I've spoken about. And we'll also be looking to provide hydrogen for transport, such as cars, heavy goods vehicles and trains. And there's a number of other industrial users in that area as well, which will be using the hydrogen. You can see down to the south is our underground hydrogen storage. So that will be stored in salt caverns that are underneath the Cheshire Plains. And those salt caverns actually are currently used for storing natural gas. So it's a proven technology. We know it can be done safely, and we'll be using those for hydrogen instead. The orange line that you can see there is the CO2 pipeline. So at the moment, it will be running from the Stanlow refinery out across the coast of northwest England into Wales, and then off the Welsh coast into those depleted gas fields in Liverpool Bay that you can see there. And along that route, we have a number of industrial plants where we will be capturing the CO2 directly from those as well. And the great thing about this is that it has continued potential to expand. We're starting relatively optimistic and enthusiastically, but we hope it will only get bigger. And as we do so, we can build more production plants. We can take hydrogen from other sources. So you can actually produce hydrogen through a process called electrolysis using renewable energy. So we can use that hydrogen as well. It doesn't need to come from our production plants. We can build that into the network. We can make the network bigger. We can go to more places, and we can pick up CO2 from more and more industrial plants. So what's really exciting about HyNet is it can only go one direction and get even bigger. So as I mentioned, we hope to really start making a difference to climate change from as soon as 2025. That little chart on the right hand side, the white bars are the CO2 emissions from industry within the Northwest region. So you can see soon where we are in 2024 and how quickly that will start to reduce. And we're looking to drive it down more than 90% of our current rate as soon as 2030. So that's making a huge impact. And you can see that's directly in proportional to the amount of hydrogen that we're producing there as well. So the more hydrogen we produce, the more natural gas we can offset, and so the less carbon emissions through that route as well. So the actual low carbon cluster that we're creating at the moment will produce that hydrogen. We will build the CO2 pipelines and the storage caverns under the sea. We will transport the hydrogen to industry and homes. And we will also be providing the technology that will allow industry and homes to make the switch from natural gas to hydrogen. In terms of the jobs and skills that are available, this project specifically is being delivered by 8 companies who have basically all got together and said this is something we really believe in and want to deliver. There are some fairly big names on there that you may recognise. Eni are an oil and gas company who are primarily based in Italy. Cadent you may have heard of, they're the gas network, so you'll see their vans on streets near your houses, things like that. So they run the natural gas network that exists today. The University of Chester is our academic partner, and they're actually doing a lot of work for us at the moment, looking at the skills gaps that we'll need to fill over the next decade. So as you guys come through your A-levels, your degrees, apprenticeships, whatever career path you're looking at taking, there will be new skills, there will be needs for you that you can fill in the region. And the University of Chester are doing a big study for us at the moment to make sure that we can fill those skill gaps. A couple more on there. So CF are a fertilizer manufacturer plant. Hanson Cement make cement. And SR is the owner and operator of Stanlow Refinery. And from all of those, we will be capturing CO2. So there are current existing manufacturing operations where we will be able to completely eliminate their CO2 emissions by this project. And Innovin in there are our partner for the hydrogen storage caverns. So they currently operate a number of storage caverns for natural gas. And up the top there, you can see the company I work for, Progressive Energy. So we're a very small company compared to some of these big names that you see here. And our job is essentially to develop, to integrate and to lead this project. So these guys have a lot of firepower, a huge amount of experience, a massive skill set. But getting everyone to work together is the most important thing here. This isn't a challenge that can be done by one company on its own. It needs someone to integrate and drive everything in the same direction. Another key collaborator that I haven't got on here at the moment is UK government. So the government are very supportive of this project and are actually providing £33 million for us to develop this through our engineering processes. And that's really, really important as well, because this, again, it's not a project that we can just deliver on our own just by building infrastructure. we need the government support mechanisms and the government influence to allow the entire country to make this really critical shift away from concentrating and relying on fossil fuel. So HyNet Northwest for you as residents of Manchester is a massive game changer. It will be making a huge transformation to North Wales and the northwest of England. There's a few, I won't read through each of these bubbles, but we're looking at supporting a lot of existing jobs, so manufacturing that already exists in the area, which would be coming under threat if those companies were to close down, should CO2 emissions continue to be a problem. So we'll be protecting those jobs, as well as creating 6,000 local permanent jobs and a huge host more of sort of short-term construction jobs as the project is actually being built. We hope to set up the Northwest as a global leader in these clean technology skills. With using the University of Chester, we're also collaborating with the University of Manchester as well, to make sure that we become a fantastic region for skills, technology and investment to come to the area and get involved, and recognise us as the best place to be for decarbonisation. So a little bit on how you can help us. So this is all for the Northwest region. We are trying to do this to make a real difference to the region in which you guys live, and we want your support, we really do. You can always go and find out a bit more about us. So we have a website, we have a Twitter page, we have a LinkedIn page, and please feel free to go and visit any of those. We've got some videos that you can watch, some animations that explain all our processes in a bit more detail, and opportunities to ask questions and provide your comments on it all. So please do get involved and give us your thoughts. Another really important thing you can do is go and talk to all the people you know. So I'm sure a lot of people you know realise what a huge challenge climate change is, and that we have to do something about it. But the more people that talk about it, and the more people who encourage their friends and family to be an advocate, to make a difference, because there is a lot that you can do on an individual scale as well as on a larger scale, the better chance we have of actually making a difference before we end up in a real emergency. Learn more about what our options are. So HyNet is a fantastic and groundbreaking project, but it's not perfect and it's not the only answer. We can't just do HyNet. We need to do an awful lot more than just that. So go and learn more about what other options are out there. As you go through your education and through further training, there will be lots of different ways that you can get involved. It's not just through projects like HyNet. There's a lot that you can do, and be enthusiastic about it. Educate yourself and go and find out more. And I just wanted to say that we need a lot of different skills in order to make this transition quickly and successful. So I'm an engineer, and a lot of the people that I work with are engineers and scientists. But I think we're really starting to recognise that it's not just as straightforward as coming up with engineering solutions. There's a huge impact on the economy and society in general. So we need people who understand social sciences. We need people who can talk about it and educate it. So things like media and communications is absolutely critical as well. And we need a whole bunch of other skills. So economics and politics, as I said, we're working with the government. We need to be able to make sure that their policy keeps pace with the work that we're doing and supports it, and that it is economically viable. Otherwise, companies and people individually just won't make the switches that they need to. We need a huge construction workforce. So we're going to be doing a lot of work in the next decade. And it's not just HyNet. Other parts of the country will be doing this as well. So there's going to be a huge demand for a construction workforce to come and be able to deliver the projects that we need to be built. Education. So if any of you want to become teachers or other wider educators, then teach your students, teach your friends about what's going on. We need people to know what's happening. Climate change needs to become part of the education system. And finally, I've put on here business management as well. So as industry and businesses switch and develop to addressing the climate emergency, there's going to have to be a lot of thought about how you run an effective business in order to do so. So another really important area where you guys could help. So I'm going to switch next on to what your task is, but I wanted to pause there briefly and see if anyone had any questions for me before I went on to the next bit.
Thanks ever so much for that, Rachel. That was amazing. We do actually. Yes, Natasha has asked, are there similar projects to HyNet in the rest of the UK, or is it Northwest specific?
No, there are several other projects going on. So a couple of really big ones over at Humberside and Teesside near Hull. there is another really big project going on, which is actually very similar to what HyNet looks like. So again, they have hydrogen production to replace natural gas, and they have carbon capture and storage, and that's getting stored out in the North Sea gas fields. And the other big project that's going on is up in Scotland. So there's a project called Acorn near Grangemouth, and again, a very, very similar sized project. Those are kind of the really big ones that are going on, which look like HyNet, but there's lots of other smaller scale initiatives as well. And actually the government is working to get us all to work together as much as possible so that we can learn from each other, share ideas and knowledge, and make sure that we can bring the whole country along together. This is just the one which is focused in our region.
Wonderful, thanks for that. So there's no other questions at the moment. If anybody else would like to ask a question, please free to do so. I think Tom has probably published the way in which you do that. But Rachel's put together an interesting task for you to look at. I am conscious of time. Can I hand over to you to introduce the task, Rachel? And we're going to go quiet. Once Rachel's introduced the task, we're going to go quiet for a little while, so it gives you the chance to have a think about your responses, maybe even discuss it amongst yourselves. And then we'll maybe come back to a few more questions and possibly some questions that may arise as a result of you having done the task. So if I could hand over to you to introduce that, please, Rachel.
Yep. Absolutely. So what I've put together for you to have a little go at now, I'll probably give you sort of 10 to 15 minutes to have a look at it and talk between yourselves. So as you've heard about there, we need a lot of different changes in order to get to net zero. This isn't something that we can do just with HyNet. And some of the sectors that we need to make those changes in, where we get big CO2 emissions at the moment, are waste. So I didn't know if you guys were aware that landfill actually emits an awful lot of CO2 and methane gases as well, another greenhouse gas, just when it gets buried underground. So we need to do something in that area to make sure that we're minimising our landfill and our water treatment. Agriculture and land use, so farming has a huge impact on climate change as well, also releasing a lot of CO2 and methane emissions. Manufacturing, construction and fuel supply is very much where HyNet is focused, so that's a really big area that we're looking at, but obviously that's a huge sector that emits a lot of carbon dioxide. And the generation of electricity, so currently the majority of electricity in this country is generated by burning natural gas. We have now stopped most of our coal heating, so that used to be the way it used to be done, was by burning coal, which was released a huge amount of CO2. So we've stopped doing that now. It's mainly natural gas, but natural gas still releases CO2. So that's another really big area. Buildings I spoke about a bit as well, and I'm sure you're all aware. Transport, so particularly private cars, heavy good vehicles, planes, all producing a lot of CO2. So all of these areas need to be addressed. We need to get to net zero in every single one of these. We can't just do one and ignore all of the others. So for the next 10 minutes, what I'd like you to do, either on your own or in groups, is just to complete a little bit of a mind map for each of these sectors. So just draw out all 6 of these. And for each of those, have a little think about the things that we in the wider term, so it could be the world, it could be the country, it could be the town that you live in, it could be your family, so the wider group can do to make a difference, and also some of the things that you as an individual can do to help reduce emissions in those areas. And I genuinely think that you should be able to come up with several for each of those areas. If you do have a bit of time at the end, if you manage to exhaust all of the things that you can think of, then pick 1 or 2 of those and have a little think about what the individual benefits or challenges of what that one might be and how we could go about overcoming it. So as Claire said, we'll go quiet for probably about 10 minutes and give you a chance to have a think. Feel free to do this on a computer, on a piece of paper, whatever works for you in whatever size group makes sense in the teams that you're in. We'll go quiet, and then if we could all come back here at 1:40, I've got one slide just to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that I have, and then there'll be another opportunity for you guys to ask any final questions of me. But as an aside, I will always be available to answer any other questions if they do come up in the future.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Rachel. Right, we're going to go quiet now. We'll come back to you in 10, guys. So thanks everybody if you participated with that. I hope that got your brains going a little bit and got you thinking a little bit more deeply about some of the concepts and themes that Rachel's been discussing with us today. Going to pass over to you, Rachel. I'm just conscious of time. We've really only got about 5 minutes here. So what I wanted to say, if anybody's got a question and we don't manage to cover it, please still put it in the box and we will ensure that either Rachel gets to answer it for you or we'll pass it on to somebody who can. But I'll hand back over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. So I hope all of you came up with some good ideas. I've put a little slide up here, which is some of my own. There isn't a right or wrong answer here. We need to do a little bit of everything, and I'm not going to spend the next 5 minutes reading all of these out, but I just wanted to pick out a couple of the ones that either things that you can go away and do, or things that you may have been slightly less aware of. So in terms of waste and landfill, so a couple of the really easy ones to deal with now is just make less waste. I mean, that's just such a massive thing that all of us can do. Don't buy things and throw them away. Just buy what you need and recycle, reuse as much as possible. In terms of agriculture and land use, so a really obvious one is plant more trees. Don't pave over your gardens. Make sure that there's plenty of natural area around and allow biodiversity to increase. So biodiversity is an excellent way to actually remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere itself. Another one you might not be aware of is going vegetarian. So I'm not advocating going vegetarian, but if it's something that you're considering, then it will have a material impact on climate change, because actually all of those animals out there are significantly contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of buildings, so installing energy efficient appliances, replacing your boilers, things like that are all quite big things that you can do. But one that's really easy is just changing your behaviour. So don't use the energy if you don't need to. Turn off the lights when you're not in the room anymore. Turn the TV off properly rather than just sticking it on standby. There are lots of little things that you can do around the house which will make an impact, and if everybody does them, it really does add up. In terms of transport, some obvious ones: go walking and cycling more rather than driving. That makes a huge impact. Using public transport as well can have a big impact, although less viable at the moment during the pandemic, but obviously in the future something we can all do more of. And flying less. I mean, all of us like to go on holiday, and taking planes is a really easy way to get abroad. But just think about those things. Direct flights, for example, use a lot less CO2 than doing lots of connecting flights. So there are considerations that you can take into account when you are doing your, going about your day-to-day lives. There's a few ideas here. I believe these slides will all be available for you guys to take away and have a look at later. So have a look at the ideas, see if you've got any extra ones. But with the last 3 minutes, I'm aware of time. I'd like to open up to any last questions, comments, thoughts. As Claire said, there'll be an opportunity to send questions to me later as well, so I can always come back to you after the event.
Yeah, nobody's coming through with any yet. I'd like to ask something, if you wouldn't mind, please. And I'm hoping that maybe it's something that maybe some of the young people that are on the call have maybe also thought about, or if they haven't, they might want to, if they were considering a career in the green sector. And obviously, you've discussed that there's so many different varied roles, and even the jobs that we don't know about, jobs of the future that we've yet to even unveil and be aware of. Is there any particular sort of pathways that you would encourage a young person to consider, maybe in terms of GCSE selections or kind of post-16 options at maybe sort of college time, or when somebody might decide they want to go down the apprenticeship route? Is there any particular sort of subjects that would be important other than the ones that I would ordinarily think about, which obviously are STEM subjects like the sciences and geography? But I just wondered if you had anything to say on that.
Yeah, so I mean, those are the obvious ones, the STEM ones. So your science, technology, engineering and maths are the kind of obvious ones where you can really get into the science of what's going on and develop the actual solutions and build those solutions as well. So that's what I do. And from a biased perspective, I will always say, do engineering. I love engineering. I can't advocate enough for it. I'd say do engineering at the University of Manchester, even though I had a fantastic time there. But I think what I would say is that it doesn't matter what you want to do, where your dream lies in terms of your career. pretty much anything you do, you can still target it towards climate change, or at the very least consider climate change in the work that you're doing. And so I did come up with that really long list of potential skills that we need in order to address the climate change. But in pretty much anything that you do, think about how you can have an impact on climate change, how you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. If you are really interested in getting more involved in the sort of work that I do, then science and maths is definitely the route to take. I did physics, maths, chemistry and biology for my A levels, so fairly traditional STEM subjects. But that isn't necessary if those aren't your skill sets. That doesn't preclude you from having a career in green technology. The one other one I would touch on, which I actually missed off my list, is computer engineering and programming as well. I mean, that's a really hot area at the moment. There's a lot of skills developing in that area. And being able to control and manage the systems that we're going to need in order to make these plants and these networks run efficiently, that's another great area that you could get involved in as well.
Fantastic. Right, I'm afraid time's caught us out on this occasion, and understandably so, with such an interesting and kind of varied presentation that you were able to give us there, Rachel. So once again, on behalf of Bridge GM and Greater Manchester Combined Authority, thank you so much, Rachel, for that insight and that information. You know, I think I know a little bit about it. I know nothing really in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's certainly something for us all to wake up and listen to for all our sakes, really, for the obvious reasons you've talked about. Thanks also to Tom, my partner in crime, who buddies up with me on the technology for these sessions. I'm very grateful for. But most of all, thank you to you all for joining, listening and taking part with the session today. As Rachel said, that if this is an area that possibly interests you as something that you'd like to explore further, please take a look at GMACS, which is our careers information platform. Tom, would you be able to just quickly put the GMACS link in the chat there for everyone to see? And indeed, if you want more information, please do speak to your careers advisors at school or college, or whatever teacher you happen to know deals with choices at 16 or 18. So I'm going to say goodbye to you all. Take care, and we hope to hear from you all soon.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.